Dr. Gibbs?
Yes.
Okay, I'm literally coming up right now.
Hmm.
Okay, so because I want to make sure, and Robert, let me know, Dr. Gibbs, if you can say something so that we can hear you.
Okay. Hello, Santita. Nice to be on again.
Nice to be on. Robert, can you hear Dr. Gibbs? Let me know. Chapearl, let me know if you can hear Dr. Gibbs. You all let me know. We're having some technical issues. I'm having a lot of those lately. Isn't that interesting? Lots of them. But we keep plugging away. You can
Sure.
hear him. Okay, well, then we're going to get started this way. That's how we'll do
All
it.
right.
Okay, and that's that.
Yep.
Chapearl, I'm going to send you Councilman uh, Casey's number, because if we have the same problem, I want you to uh, tell him to call me on my phone. Okay.
Okay, will do.
So let me send you his number, because he's down in Texas, and if you could ask him to call like 6:35, Councilman Thomas.
Okay.
I'm sending you his number right now. Okay, he was very, very kind. Okay, so we'll get right to it.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Okay, let me just make sure that I have her off. Okay, Dr. Gibbs, we are coming up in 5. No, let me just make it an even. Oh, okay. Dr. Gibbs, I got you.
Yeah. Okay. So, somehow or another we disconnected. I don't know how.
I'm going to start right now.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is a joy to be with you. We're talking about the United Nations. We are also talking about the ICE shootings down in Dallas. What happened there? What happened there? What happened there? It has shattered the city, and certainly it is just devastating to the rest of us all around the country. But we want to talk about the United Nations. And everybody, I've been having all these technical issues. Maybe it's the issues that we're talking about. But we're going to keep plugging away. How about that? Everybody, I want you to meet me on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social. I'm still on X at SantitaJ. I'm on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody like and share, like and share, like and share. And I am on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Did I say that already? Santita Jackson, Santita Jackson IG, Santita Jackson IG. And look, we're just going to keep this rolling. And Santita Jackson and friends, and friends, and friends, and friends. So let's get to it. Facebook is going in and out, but you know what? Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. We're going to make it work, make it work. And I need you all to like and share the show, help us with the algorithm. Progressive shows get suppressed. Many of you have messaged me and you said, look, we're not getting notified. There's a lot that's going on. A lot that's going on. And you know what? All we can do is continue to persevere. How about that part? We're not going to be defeated. We're going to continue to do the work. So, everybody, please, please, please join me and Zenobia and Robert and Correctional Officer for the Lockdown. So proud of you, and Pearl, and so many people who are here. Bernadette, who's always on telling you to like and share. Michael Roundtree, hey, how you doing? We've got, of course, brilliant historian from the University of Arizona, Dr. David Gibbs. I want to know what you thought of the president's speech yesterday at the United Nations. How consequential was it? I know it's supposed to be about 15 minutes. Of course, his lasted an hour, and his teleprompter was not working. The escalator broke as as he and the first lady were stepping onto it, and you could see that he felt that there was sabotage. I get it. I get it. I've seen it happen before. Don't know if that's what happened. Things do happen. Nothing is perfect, but there we go. And so you helped me to understand, what was your takeaway from his speech, the tone of it, as he told these countries that the immigration issues were going to make their countries go to hell, things like that. Dr. David Gibbs.
Well, a lot of it seemed like vintage Trump. A lot of it was self-promoting, extolling his record, and bashing the Biden administration. A lot of it seemed honestly very petty. A lot of it, in a way that's uniquely Trumpian, shall we say? It was meandering. It wasn't that well thought out. There was a certain tone of contempt for the United Nations, which I think is part of his general style of xenophobia. And there was, a lot of direct criticism of immigration, including to other countries. The idea of what he called open borders is something that he obviously detests. And the tone from the audience was interesting in the sense that he appeared 7 years ago in his first term, and people were overtly laughing at him. I have to say, there's something kind of comical about his style. I can't get around that fact that there's something kind of, it's almost like he's a bit of a joke, but
he's also a
nevertheless
funny guy. It's just these are not funny times.
Well, he is actually, a lot of what he does, it almost does seem like stand-up comedy, or maybe whether intentional or unintentional, but you'd think that in an address before the United Nations, he would try and adopt a more tone of gravitas, but he evidently doesn't do that. But the response 7 years ago was people were laughing at him, and this time they were not laughing at him. I think that people have figured out that Trump has dominated American politics for 10 years. People thought that the first term was just an aberration, a fluke, and I think now people are figuring out it's not a fluke. This is some basic change in U.S. politics, and there's no going back to what it was before. And so it really will not do just to treat Trump as a joke. He's whatever else you may think of Trump, underestimating him is just not going to be a successful strategy. And I think I was seeing that in the audience, that people have figured that out. And so as to tone, as to substance, there wasn't that much substance. I mean, there are a lot of familiar themes bashing the idea of climate change. Climate change is a hoax. Bashing immigration, as I said, extolling what a wonderful president he's been. But the one thing that was significant was on Ukraine. He, on the one hand, was he used bellicose rhetoric towards Russia. He's going to impose additional sanctions, additional round of sanctions, tariffs, presumably against people who trade with Russia. But he said he would only do that if Europe does it first. But the implication that he's passing this off to Europe, basically, I had the strong impression he doesn't expect Europe to oppose these sanctions. At present, several European countries continue to get Russian gas, if I'm not mistaken, through one functioning pipeline that goes through Slovakia and Hungary. In addition, I believe that Europe buys Russian oil through India. In other words, Russia exports massive amounts of oil to India, and then India then re-exports it to Europe. Europe doesn't want to admit they buy Russian oil, so they don't buy it directly. They buy it from India at a much higher price. That's what they've been doing. And Trump basically is insisting Europe has to cut off that oil completely, knowing full well Europe won't do that. And so what I see here is additional evidence that despite some bellicose rhetoric, what Trump is doing is slowly trying to walk away from the Ukraine war and pass it over to Europe, so that when Russia wins, as I think is very likely at this point, he can claim he didn't lose the war, Europe lost the war. I think that's his strategy, and I'm seeing additional evidence of that in the speech he gave to the UN. But other than that, it just seemed like boilerplate Trump.
Well, do you think that his relationship with President Putin has changed? Because it seems like the language it seems like it's hostile.
Oh yeah. There's no doubt he's adopting much more hostile rhetoric towards Russia. And I don't believe he said it in this speech, but elsewhere he has said, Europe can shoot down Russian planes if they stray into European territory. There's been some claimed incidents of Russian drones and so on, going into Poland. It's really minor things, but he insisted that Europe should feel free to shoot down Russian planes, which is something that could lead to World War III if that happened. But that's what he said. And he said that Ukraine can win the war, and that not only that, can recover all of its territory, and possibly more, meaning they could possibly invade Russia. That's a fantasy. That's not going to happen. But nevertheless, the fact that he's saying that, to me, indicates that he's adopting very bellicose rhetoric, even as he's walking away from the war. I am seeing some consistency here, and the consistency I'm seeing, which is unusual for Trump because he changes every 5 minutes, but I am seeing something of a thread here, and the thread is, as I said, trying to walk away slowly from this war, but do so in such a way that when the Russians win, he can claim he didn't lose the war, Europe lost the war, and Ukraine lost the war. I think that's how he's trying to position himself. He's given up on the idea of settling the war. He's given up on the idea of winning the war. Now all he wants to do is let Russia win the war eventually, but in a way that he won't be blamed for it.
Why is the United States holding on to this conflict in Ukraine?
That's a good question. I think so much of it is sunk cost. The fact that we've already put such an immense amount of resources into it, accepted higher prices for energy and food is one. Clearly, sunk cost. You don't want to basically throwing good money after bad. A lot of people want to do that. We can't lose now. We're too committed. We can't lose, even if losing is inevitable. Europe is even more committed. Europe just seems to be very steeped in the rhetoric of Russophobia, so much so that they can't walk away from it. They've become so committed to this. Their reputations are so enmeshed in defeating Russia. They simply can't imagine walking away from this, even though Europe's paying a much higher price for this in the United States. It's wrecking Europe's economy. It's making the major countries of Europe, the leaders of these countries, extraordinarily unpopular. Starmer in Britain, Macron in France, and now Metz in Germany, who've just elected, they're extremely unpopular with their own populations. And I think the economic fallout from the war in Ukraine is one of the main reasons for it. But nevertheless, they feel they're in too deep to walk away from it. And it's kind of unfortunate just because the war is simply grinding on, causing havoc, basically, in Europe, costing hundreds of thousands of lives in Russia and Ukraine. And Russia, in the end, is going to win. I don't think there's any way that can be avoided at this point. The war could have been settled within the first month or two, almost was settled. But the peace negotiations in Istanbul were deliberately sabotaged by the United States and Britain, which is really a pretty horrendous thing to do, in my opinion. And in the end, Ukraine will pay the heaviest price for this because they're going to lose the war.
When we look at stepping back, we looked, of course, at Ukraine. You've got Palestinian statehood. That is now front and center with the United Nations. Is the United Nations, is it a paper tiger? I mean, or does the condemnation from the international court, I mean, does any of this really matter?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Israel is incredibly isolated. I mean, the only real friend it has is the United States. And American public opinion is gradually turning against American support for Israel. And this is starting to happen on the right as well. I mean, there's been much talk about how Kirk, in the days before his assassination, was openly in conflict with the Israel lobby. And so young conservatives under 30, a lot of them are turning against American support for Israel, and that includes evangelicals who've been rock solid in their support for a long time. And so Netanyahu here is playing with fire. I mean, if he loses American support, he has nothing. Everyone else, Israel is becoming a pariah state. It really is. It reminds me very much of South Africa in its last days. And, you could say, South Africa looked like a horrendous country, but the fact of the matter is what Israel is doing is even worse than what South Africa was doing. I mean, anyway, don't get me going on this, but
no, so I think we need to be reminded, because I think at some level we're numb now.
Yeah.
But now you've got, within the country, you've got the Ellisons taking over CBS and TikTok.
Yeah.
We're watching consolidation of our media resources.
That's true. That's true.
You know,
That's yeah.
that would push against where the world is
Yep.
on this Middle East question. And that to
Yeah.
me that's a really perilous position for the United States to be in while we still have this massive veto vote, on the
Yeah.
Security Council. I'm wondering, my goodness, would that ever be taken away?
Well, I think what I mean, in the long run, it is possible you may see a restructuring of the world order, basically away from U.S. hegemony, and that may affect the United Nations. There may be calls to remove the United Nations from New York and place it somewhere else, perhaps Geneva, maybe Singapore. I think that the Trump administration has said they will not grant visas to Palestinians who are now going to have a seat at the United Nations because they've been recognized by so many countries. There's an effort to get them a full-fledged seat in the General Assembly, and the Trump administration has blocked the possibility of visas for these people. Now that's a violation of America's agreement with UN that established UN in New York, that even if the United States doesn't like certain countries, we had to grant visas to them. For example, we grant visas to North Korea so they can participate in the United Nations, even though we don't have diplomatic relations with them. So if the U.S. won't grant visas to the Palestinian delegation, there may be calls to remove the United Nations from New York and set it up somewhere else, and perhaps restructure the United Nations. Let's face it, the Security Council is obsolete. France and Britain have the permanent, membership and a veto power in the Security Council. They're not the powers they were in 1945. They're not what they used to be. It's astonishing that a country like India, with 1.3 billion people, many, many times the population of France and Britain combined, has no seat on the Security Council. So there may be calls to restructure the Security Council along more, shall we say, modernized lines in ways that will not be very friendly to the United States. I mean, right now, essentially, the permanent members, the United States has three votes, not just one, because France and Britain are U.S. allies. That may lose legitimacy in the long term, and I think the Trump administration is accelerating all these processes. We are definitely seeing a real shift in the world order. I mean, we're seeing a realignment in American politics, but also a realignment on the global level. And that will definitely affect the United Nations in the long term. I think that Trump basically, he does come off as belligerent and hostile to most foreign countries. And I think he had it on display in the United Nations. He has this barely concealed contempt for much of the outside world. And there it was on display.
Well, I'm wondering if the world has contempt for him and thus the United States. Because as you pointed out several years ago, people laughed at him. He was comical. Now, I interpreted the silence as hostility.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest with you. I've been in enough situations, really at that level, where I've seen people sabotaged, quite frankly. I saw it happen to Reverend when he was giving his 88th speech. Everyone knows he has asthma. And suddenly, they adjust the stage. I mean, everything is highly choreographed. My brothers, my sister and I introduced him, and they adjusted the podium literally to my height, Jesse's height, Johnny's height, Yusuf's height, Jackie's height. Boom. And then my father's height, who's taller than everybody. And as soon as he comes up to the stage, they turn on the air, full blast. His suit is waving like a flag in a hurricane. And there was a picture of my brother in a special issue. I think it was of Life that they did for that convention, where he has his back up against the fan until we could literally slide cardboard to him. And my mother was furious. She said, they know my husband has asthma. What they wanted to do was have him sneeze and embarrass him. No, these things do happen, everybody. They do.
I'm sure you're right.
I saw it happen. Yeah. And so when I saw him yesterday, I mean, this has nothing to do whether you like someone or not like someone. People I think, you can get sabotaged, but I also believe that the world community is feeling some kind of way with Israel. I think
Yeah.
the BRICS nations are feeling, they're emerging, they are ascendant. China
Yep,
is the
they're very,
number
very
one
definitely,
economic.
very definitely.
Yeah, I mean, so these people are looking at America and they're saying, wait a minute, we can remove the United Nations from New York. And very quietly, it appears that they are.
I would bet there'd be some move afoot within the next couple of years to propose that, and even. Yeah, the fact of the matter is, the situating it of New York in 1945 that reflected American power and American prestige.
Yeah.
But the prestige is gone, and the power is eroding very fast.
So what is our takeaway then from this 2025 General Assembly? Are we watching what what did we see?
Well, I think we're seeing a situation in which America's status in the world is declining, and the U.S., at least under Trump, President Trump, now he doesn't care about it. He welcomes the decline of U.S. influence in the world, and he's just fine with it, and he's never, America first. Well, I think that he's been very hypocritical about it, because you could say in the Middle East it's maybe Israel first, so there's enormous hypocrisy there. But I think there's an authentic hostility to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world returns the compliment. You're quite right. I interpreted the silence as hostility. I think there's a recognition that laughing at him is a very foolish thing, because the guy's serious in some respects, and basically he's dominating U.S. politics, and he's causing a lot of havoc in the world, and that can't be denied, and that's not so funny. So I think what you're seeing here is, America in decline. That's what I was seeing. America in decline as a superpower. And the question is, what comes next? I mean, the answer is, I don't know, in short, but I could see an optimistic scenario where a new world order led by the BRICS, and especially led by China, it's not going to be, based on love and kindness, but there'll be some degree of order to it, and it'll be more authentically a law-based order. At least that's my hope. I really don't think China really seeks to become a kind of military superpower the way the United States is. They are building up their military, but I think it's a response to a lot of U.S. provocations. If you look at their spending on the military as a percentage of GDP, it's much lower than the United States. I mean, they could be a much if they wanted to spend more, but apparently they don't beyond a certain point. And so that tells me that China doesn't really intend to just replace the United States as sort of the hyperpower of the world. They have almost no overseas military bases. We have hundreds of them. I'm not seeing any evidence China really wants a lot of overseas military bases. So we could be seeing a new world order that will be, frankly, better and less warlike if American hegemony declines. The U.S. has been a major source of destabilization in the world, and not just under Trump, under Biden as well. And so, and under multiple administrations over time, it could be the time is up for American hegemony, and maybe that's a good thing, something that I would look forward to as a positive.
Why would you look forward to that as a positive?
Well, the U.S. has been such a rogue state. I mean, war after war, intervention after intervention, always justified with a lot of pompous rhetoric, but producing disastrous results. Look at Afghanistan. Look at Iraq. Look at Libya. Look at the Middle East, Gaza. Look at Ukraine. And, you have all these dead bodies piled up, and these are things, in many cases, the U.S. just caused directly by its belligerence and its unilateralism. And so I think basically the American century is coming to an end, and that's something I would welcome.
Dr. David Gibbs, well, I think you said a lot, but I think that we could interpret the silence of the majority of the world. This is we're only 4.5% of the world, everybody. We are isolated. I mean, please speak. Yes.
Yeah, and if you take all U.S. allies, all of NATO, Japan, South Korea, Canada, etc., add them all together, that's about 12% of the world.
Mm-hmm.
People forget there's a little bubble, like I would call it the NATO bubble, and they imagine the international community is the NATO bubble. It's 12% of the world.
They call themselves, whenever they have the G7, they're like, this is world leadership. I'm like, no, it isn't. 7/8 of the world is not even there. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it is to some extent. It's become a bit of a fantasy, things like the G7. And it's obsolete. It's not working. And I think the world is starting to recognize it's not working. I suspect there's going to be a big push for something else. One of the things that is accelerating it is that the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. I mean, the war, what Israel's doing in Gaza and throughout the Middle East with direct American involvement and massive U.S. support, I mean, is there for all to see. You have these videos coming out of Gaza, and Israel blowing up apartment buildings one after the other and shooting people, starving them to death. It's not like that's very good public relations for American hegemony, let's just put it that way. And when the U.S. loses the war in Ukraine, which is inevitable in my view, it's going to be an enormous blow to U.S. hegemony. It will not be recoverable in terms of America's reputation.
Well, I would like for you to, before we go, I'm going to bring up a former Dallas city councilman, Casey Thomas, up to talk about the tragedy in Dallas today. Oh, my goodness. Solomon Harris is bringing up some very interesting points that I don't want you to overlook. He starts with saying that you're overlooking the fact that China takes over by owning land and not by the military. He says that you're anti-American and that he's with Trump in making America great. You said you're not neutral, you're a globalist. What say you?
I'm sorry, is he saying I'm not neutral, I'm a globalist?
This guy's not neutral, he's a globalist.
Well, I mean, nobody's really neutral. I mean, you can't basically not have an opinion on these things. And so I suppose that I'm interested, an American citizen, I'm very concerned about what happens here. But yes, I'm concerned about what happens in the rest of the world too. I'll happily admit that. China's not perfect, and they have a lot of, there's an authoritarian tendency in their country. There's no doubt they act on self-interest like all countries do, but I don't think they're anywhere near as warlike as the United States. Mm-hmm. And a lot of their foreign investment, the Belton program, it has pluses and minuses, but I'd say on balance, I'd say it's probably a better thing. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot quoted I don't know where this came from, but I've seen this, is a lot of people say, you talk to the Chinese and you get an airport. You talk to the Americans and you get a lecture. Mm-hmm. And so China is building up infrastructure in Africa. They're building infrastructure right and left. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing. They're not building military bases is what they're doing.
Well, they don't think that it's cost effective, and they will tell you that. That is what when President Trump was in his first term, Solomon, he called President Carter and he said he'd gotten into the seat. He had gotten a lot of information. He said, China is surging ahead. Why are they surging ahead? And we're beginning to lag behind. He said, because they build relationships and we do war.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what President Carter said it. And there's no way that you can you can't pull for America and not tell the truth, Solomon. It is not progress for us to have all of these bases all over the world. It is not progress for people to look at America and say, we're removing the United Nations from your hands because we have no faith in you. That's what's happening to us. And China has built relationships. They have built them. They say, you have this, I've got that, let's work together. That is not how Europeans have traditionally done this, Dr. Gibbs. They haven't.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that it has to be said also that hundreds of U.S. bases overseas, that is an enormous cost for the American public.
Yes.
Basically, we're spending too much money on guns and too little on butter. And my sense is the population would rather have butter, frankly. I can't blame them one bit. I'd rather have more butter than guns.
Well, I think I can eat butter. I can't eat guns.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Basically, the overspending on the military has been at the expense of the American public. Mm-hmm. I sense on both sides of the aisle, both on right and left, you're getting a lot of real anger about that. I'm saying one of the things that there's evidence for this, that basically one of the things that elected Trump in 2016 is a lot of people, I would say foolishly, but nevertheless, believe Trump would be a less warlike president. He'd be a man of peace. He's not, let's face it. But nevertheless, I think that basically he represented something different. That's certainly true. And a lot of people did believe he'd be less warlike, and they voted on him for him on that basis. And I think it does reflect the fact that even on the right, on the nationalist right, you're getting a lot of dissatisfaction with this massive overspending on the military. And I'm hopeful that it'll produce a real change in American politics. Trump is certainly not the answer to the problem. There's no doubt about that. But I think there is a crying need in terms of public desire to spend a lot less on the military and to increase living standards. And I'm all for that personally.
Well, are you being partisan here?
Well, I mean, I'm not partisan. I'm not partisan in terms of I don't really see the Democrats as being that much better, and I'll be very frank about that. So I just see both parties as very deeply dysfunctional at this point. I am partisan, and I do think overspending on the military has been a disaster. I think basically American hegemony based on military power has been a disaster for the United States and for the world. And so I'll happily admit to that bias. Yes.
Okay, well, there you go. And I'm with you on that. And I want to thank you for being with us. Thank you for working with me through these through these glitches. No, it's okay. It's all right. I mean, I know what I'm dealing with, and I'm not mad about it. I keep on pushing through. And I want to thank you so much for being with us today. And I cannot wait to have you. Oh, always, always, always. The Revolt of the Rich, everybody. Get the book. Get the book. Get the book. And of course, this brilliant historian, Dr. David Gibbs from the University of Arizona. It's always a joy to be with you.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye, Santita.
Blessings to you. Hey, we have got someone new to the family. I'm so glad that he is here with us today. We have got you, former Mayor Pro Tem Casey Thomas of Dallas, Texas. You all do it nice and big in Texas. And my goodness, it's wonderful to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
But something very painful happened there today. What happened at the ICE detention center?
Yes, once again, it's a pleasure to be with you. I've heard great things about you, so it's a pleasure to actually meet you virtually. Look forward to the opportunity to meet you in person. Today, we suffered a tragedy here in the city of Dallas. There was a shooting that took place at the Dallas ICE facility. The person who is accused of doing the shooting, they found him deceased. It's a self-inflicted wound. There was one person who was a detainee who was killed, unfortunately, and two people were hospitalized, and I'm hearing one was a Mexican national. So it's a sad day here in the city of Dallas, but we're a very resilient city, resilient people, and we will recoup from this. The climate across the country, I think, has set the tone for this and many other tragedies that we've seen, and hopefully, calmer voices will prevail. Those who are respected will speak up and say there's no excuse and no need for political violence in this country, and that's what we need right now.
But let me ask you, speaking of the climate in the United States right now, let's speak to that, particularly as we look at ICE being deployed in Chicago. I said maybe we celebrated too quickly because, of course, we did not have the National Guard deployed. We did not have the FBI deployed, at least not as far as we could see. We did not have our police federalized. But what they did do, they were holding ICE back. And then they deployed them September 8th, and boy, oh boy, oh boy. We have had quite a ride in the greater Chicago area. And even someone, bless his heart, he was chased by ICE, and he he was killed. And of course, none of the cameras were on and all of that. And so just help me to understand what is the atmosphere for migrants and immigrants in Texas? Because of course your governor, um, instead of taking them back across the border since they offend him so, he's hired bus companies that have made tens of millions of dollars and he's deployed them all over the country. Help me to understand what's going on here.
Unfortunately, um, our governor has been walking in lockstep with the current resident of the White House. That's what I call him. Uh, Even when we saw him support racist redistricting maps and a redistricting process that racially negatively impacted black voters in the state of Texas. So I'm not surprised he's up for re-election. He wants the current residents' endorsement. And so I've seen him walk lockstep with him, and he will probably continue to walk lockstep with him moving forward. It is not in the best interest of Texas. It's not in the best interest of people of color, especially black people in the state of Texas. And so we have to continue to speak up, speak out, and resist and show resistance to things that are against what's in the best interest of Texas and what's in the best interest of the residents here in the city of Dallas and the state of Texas.
What exactly happened? Do we know any more about the assailant in this attack? They, we understand. I mean, is it true that there were messages that were anti-immigrant, that were anti-migrant, that were found?
That's what I've heard and read as well, as it relates to the shooter, white male, 29 years old. Don't know a lot more at this time about him. However, we cannot allow this to be about a particular ideology.
Mm-hmm.
We have to make sure that people are safe and protected. And like I said, it's no place for political violence in
Mm-hmm.
this state, in this city, or in this country. And we need people who are well respected to speak up, stand up, and say, we must put a stop to this because if we don't, we're going to continue to see tragedies like this take place.
Do we know how the conditions in which these detainees are being held? Have any elected officials been able to go in and inspect this particular facility?
As of now, I'm not aware of that. I'm sure since this tragedy has taken place, we will see more local officials, local elected officials who will look to have an opportunity to enter the facility and see what condition not only the facility is in, but those who are detained in the facility are in as well.
What, I mean, just going forward, where do you see us in the country right now? Because this is a moment that's fraught with a lot of tension. If you looked at the videos from Chicago over the past weekend, uh, people are pushing back. They don't feel comfortable with the the detention, the detention of these people. You've had the farm industry come to the president and say, "Hey, wait a minute, you need to slow down." Corporations are like, "Wait, wait, wait. You know, we need our workers. We need them." Um, and just even as we've watched the police have been deployed in places where the crime rate has been dropping, in Washington, in Chicago, um, and you don't have the resources to do the work that would drive down crime. When I was growing up, you had park districts that had programs. I mean, school ended at 3:15. The park district program started at 3:30, and kids were there until 5, 6 in the evening, and then you went home. And it has been shown that that cuts down on truancy and well, socially, uh, socially maladapted behavior. So help me to understand. I mean, what is it? What are we doing? And are you getting what you need? Are you getting what you need to have a functioning city? Because these are people who've been pulled into our country, like we were brought here, quite frankly, to do some work. Not that I mean, so but they're not being respected, and but this is what you remember. You got a lot of people brought into Texas from Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina because these people were not allowed to stay there and rebuild the Gulf region. What the Department of Labor did was loosen the rules, relax the rules, labor rules, so that they could bring in people from South and Central America and have them work for cheap. So, former Mayor Pro Tem, Casey Thomas, I'm trying to figure out. I mean, is there a way out of this?
Well, I think what we have to continue to do is people of conscience, people of faith have to step up. People have to speak up. People of all nationalities, we need our white brothers and sisters of conscience to speak up and speak out about so many of the injustices that are taking place here in this country, here in this state, here in this city. Um, that's a must. We have to form a alliance of resistance that is committed and focused to seeing justice prevail here in this country. And until we do that, we're going to continue to see the things that we're seeing. We've seen a redistribution of wealth
Mm-hmm.
to billionaires, and we're seeing individuals who are wealthy, who are making decisions, and who are putting resources behind individuals who are going to carry out their agenda. Where are the people who are going to step up and carry out our agenda?
What is the agenda as you see it should be?
Well, I see the agenda should be about equity. It should be about justice. It should be about fairness. It should be about level playing field. And the way that that happens is government has played a role in unleveling the playing field. It's going to take government in order to level the playing field. But we have to hold individuals who are elected accountable to things that are going to be beneficial for the majority of the people in this country, not the wealthy minority. We have to come together. We have to have a long term, long range vision and strategy. Many people that fought to overturn affirmative action, many people who fought to overturn Roe versus Wade, many people who fought to overturn many of the progresses and of the progress that your father and many people who stood with him, the people who have worked, they have worked since this legislation was passed. 40 years, 50 years, a committed long-term strategy, and they stayed diligent, stayed persistent, and now we're starting to see the fruits of their labor that is not beneficial to all people. We have to have that same level of commitment. We have to be in it for the long haul. We have to train the next generation of civil rights activists. We have to have them to join us on the front line. I shared when I spoke at the redistricting hearing, I said many people say what they would have done if they were alive during the civil rights movement. Well, this is our civil rights movement, and this is our chance to step up, speak up, and do something.
Yeah.
And if you don't do something now, you would not have done something then.
Well, I mean, it never stopped. I mean, it never stopped. It continues. What has happened with redistricting? I've heard about it from Houston, but help me to understand with Dallas. I mean, what is at stake with this redistricting in Dallas?
Well, the maps that passed, fortunately, and I want to commend the Texas NAACP and the NAACP for filing the lawsuit against these racially gerrymandered maps. But what has happened here in Dallas, in particular, in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, is we are at risk of losing one of our African American U.S. Congress members they are potentially pitting some of our African American Congress members against one another. And that was the desired outcome. This whole thing came up because the current resident of the White House asked the governor of this state to put this on the agenda for the special legislative session. He followed that. Fortunately, many people, courageous state reps, took the last tool they had in the toolbox, and left the state of Texas. My fiance, Aisha Davis, who's a freshman House member, was one of them who left. State Rep Ronald Reynolds also left the state of Texas, left their family, left their jobs, left everything because they knew what was at stake, and because they courageously left and went to other states. We're seeing that this has become a national issue. We've got states all across the country that otherwise wouldn't have even considered doing redistricting that are open to this, and we're hoping this will level the playing field. The current resident of the White House knows his policies are not popular. He's not popular, and he knows that during the midterm election, the party out of power usually wins the House and the Senate, and so he wants to rig the game before the game is played, and we cannot stand on the sidelines and allow this to happen. We've got to take the next 14 months and begin educating our community about what was in the big ugly bill, what are some of the other policies, the impact of the implementation of Project 2025, and how it has hurt our communities. And if we don't stand up and speak up and we don't see change next November, we're going to get more of the same.
We're talking with former Mayor Pro Tem Casey Thomas of Dallas, Texas, about what is happening in Dallas. Of course, we have been focusing on Texas with the legislators who made a run for freedom. I was corrected. They didn't run away. They ran for freedom.
Absolutely.
But now what we're looking at is this ill wind in the United States. Because with the tragic killing of Charlie Kirk, immediately our highest elected officials cast blame. Instead of trying to unify the nation, they really helped to further divide the nation. And I'm wondering, and then we hear so much anti-migrant, anti-immigrant, brown and black people at least, coming from Governor Abbott and others. I can't help but think that what happened today was it grounded in that at least a little bit, because there's just an ill wind blowing through the country. I mean, what is it like down in Texas? Because you were ground zero for these state legislators who made this run for freedom. You're ground zero for losing possibly Jasmine Crockett, Mike DC, Al Green, a couple of Latinos who progressives really need. You need those people on the floor arguing against the big, beautiful bill. Because what I have to remind you, everybody, so many people, these Republican congressmen, and I'm not hyperpartisan, everybody. I am not. Because I told you it's two wings on the same bird. Somehow or another, we all end up in the same place all the time. But what they did was these Republican congressmen went to see the president individually, and sometimes in little clumps, and they got carve-outs. So they were able to sign on to the big, beautiful bill because, well, you might lose, but my district will not. That's what happened. And so you've got a lot of chaos, And I need you to help me to understand, what is the atmosphere like down in Dallas and down in Texas?
Well, in Texas, what we're seeing is this was probably the most partisan conservative legislative session that we've had in a very long time. And many people are feeling disappointed, disgusted, but we cannot let them lose hope, because if we lose hope, we lose everything. So we have got to continue to educate people on the harmful effects of these policies and these laws that were passed. The governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, all these people are up, as well as some of our state senators and all of our state house members are up for re-election next November. We have got to show up in massive numbers. And we've got to make sure that we put them on notice that we are not going to tolerate this. We are going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to educate our community. We're going to have our faith community come together around an initiative called Freedom Summer 2.0, which we're excited that we'll be rolling out probably around Dr. King holiday. That will be a strategy to build Black political power through the faith community. We've got to once again go back to our roots, and we've got to come together, and we've got to fight together, and we've got to stand up, and we've got to make a difference. And we can't get comfortable when we make some progress, because we've seen tradition. Whenever we make progress, there's always a backlash. Some people say a blacklash. We've got to expect a backlash when we make progress, and we got to stay on guard to make sure that we protect the progress that we've made over the past decades.
Do you see, is there a coming together with the Black and Latino communities?
You know what's really interesting, and I'm glad you asked that, is because of the attack on the Latino community, immigrant communities, many of those who supported the current resident in the White House are saying that they were used for their votes. Now many of them are seeing, you know what, our families are being, members of our family are being deported. Children are being deported. You know, back under the current resident, when he was in office before, he initially tried these same things, but there were guardrails. There were people who were in the administration who said, you know what, this is going too far. Those guardrails have been removed now, and we're seeing the effects of what was intended back in 2016 happening now in 2025.
Just moving forward, how can we, how can we be supportive of of Texas? Because what's happening in Texas is spreading all around the country. And just slowly we're being picked, even though um, areas that have been governed by red governors and red mayors, they're surviving the first pass. Former Mayor Pro Tem of Dallas, Casey Thomas, I think eventually everybody's is gonna be touched by this. I just, because it feels like you got this police state coming. It's here, you know. Even though they passed the law, the legislation out in California for the ICE agents not to be masked, the fact that you have to pass legislation to unmask these agents, that's just, this is a lot. And not only are they, they're separating families, and they're sending people to South America, they're sending people to Africa. What do you see? What do we need to do in your estimation? You've been really the second in command of one of the largest cities in the country that's extremely diverse. You have poverty, but you have a lot of wealth too. You have it all in Dallas. What do you can give us a prescription? Right, doctor, I need you to write it up. What do we need to
Absolutely. We've got to organize, we've got to educate, we've got to mobilize, and we've got to stay consistent. If we do those four things and we do it consistently over time, not only will we see or be able to build Black political progress, but we will be able to sustain the Black political progress that we build. when we talk about organizing, we got to be able to speak the language of the average brother and sister in the hood. We got to be able to make sure that they understand what the redistricting means for your community, what it means for your neighborhood, what it means for your family. We've got to make sure they understand what's at stake. We've got to be able to educate our community on why it's important not only to vote, but why it's important to hold people that we vote into office accountable.
Mm.
And then we've got to make sure we mobilize our community. Once people are organized, once they're educated, once they're educated, they will mobilize, they will want to mobilize. Once we mobilize them, not just to the polls, that's important because voting is important. Once we mobilize and we get people, record number of people in our community to the polls, we got to keep them engaged. We can't say like we did in 2008, well, we elected the first black president, now we turn it over to him. No, that's the mistake that was made. We did not stay in the fight. We did not hold our senators and our Congress members accountable to supporting the agenda of President Barack Obama. If we're successful in this effort, then we can make change in Texas. We can win the state House of Representatives. We've got to make sure that they are courageous enough to implement the agenda. Oftentimes, we give people our votes, but we don't hold them accountable to implement our agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things, and it begins right now. We have 14 months to train our community, educate our community, make sure people are registered to vote, make sure that registration is good because we know there are efforts to remove people from the ballot, remove them from their right to vote, left and right. It's happening all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
But then we got to make sure they understand why it's important for them to vote. The younger generation, I've had many conversations with them, and the fact that we died for the right to have, for this right to vote, that no longer works with this generation.
Mm-hmm.
They got to understand how decisions that are made today directly affect them, not the decisions that were made in the past. The history is important. We can't walk away from that. But we got to show them in this day and time why they have to not only be registered, but they have to vote and they have to hold the people we elect accountable. Many other communities, when they elect you, they hold you accountable. They're not afraid of their elected officials. In our community, they elect you and they deify you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that we have to do. We have to make sure that they are elected to represent us. Our agenda must become their agenda. And just like we elected them, we can elect someone else to serve in their place. And once we can educate and we can build a politically mature generation, then we'll see the type of change that we've seen happen in the past, and we will protect those changes going to make our community prosper into the future.
It works when you work it. Former Dallas Mayor Pro Tem Casey Thomas, I thank you for being with us today. I can't wait to have you back.
Let me know when.
Absolutely. And just know that our heart goes out to the people of Dallas. And know there are a lot of broken hearts tonight, and our hearts are broken too. We pray for the healing to come. God bless you.
We appreciate the empathy. We need it. And hopefully, we're resilient people here in Dallas. Hopefully, this will be this will be the event that will cause us to come together and see we have more in common than we don't.
Amen. Amen. Everybody, I am Santita Jackson. This is the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. God bless.